Well, it has become the #1 issue, and today it was the sole focus for the top two candidates. After months of calls to visit the southern border, President Biden did that just moments ago.
We need to act. It's time for the speakers and some of my Republican friends in Congress who are blocking this bill to show a little spine.
President calling for the passage of that Senate negotiated bill. And just a few hundred miles away, Donald Trump returned to one of the focal points of his presidency.
But this is a Joe Biden invasion. This is a Biden invasion. Over the past 3 years, the United States is being overrun by the Biden migrant crime. It's a new form of vicious violation to our country.
All right, so where do both go from here as the race for the White House focuses on familiar and unfamiliar grounds? Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, here we are and here we go. Hanging out today, Ford O'Connell, former Trump campaign surrogate. Roma Daravi is the former Trump White House Deputy Director of Strategic Communications. Scott Bolden, NewsNation contributor and former D.C. Democratic Party chairman. And Amisha Cross, former Obama campaign advisor. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. I know you two are itching to talk about the border here. Hold on for a second. We'll get to you. They're always itching to talk about it. Ladies first, though. Amisha, President Biden down at the border today. After months of calls for him to get there, he did it.
He should be there. Well, it has appeared to be, and poll after poll shows it, that it is one of the top issues on this electoral campaign cycle. He recognizes it. He recognizes the importance of it. The border issue is not one that is just one of Texas at this point. It is also one of New York. It is also New York City, Chicago, various other cities across the country. And I think that because the Republicans blew up the immigration bill that was extremely comprehensive, one of the most comprehensive, I would argue the most comprehensive this nation has ever seen, that was derived by Republicans. They were the architects of it. At the behest of Donald Trump not wanting to see the Biden administration have a win, this was time to go and tout that bill, tout the importance of what was let go of and how dangerous this is. Also to re-energize people around the fact that we need this. I think that New York special election also made this a very significant point.
So is it the special election? Is he seeing the polling, Scott? I mean, there had been calls for months. Why now?
The polling. For sure. And it's a #1 issue.
I mean, is that cynical then, right?
No,
because this has been going
I think
on
the White House is taking way too long to put their arms around this.
Okay.
The videos of people, including officers helping people through the wires and through the walls and what have you, it's an issue now. But the one reason it's an issue is because it's now hit and overrun sanctuary cities. And the Democrats have to be real about that. They have to concede that, and they need to do something about it. The Republicans blew up the bill, and so now they're going to use that Republican denial to hang it around their political.
We held them back long enough. But hold on. Before you get into that, Donald Trump obviously made the decision to go there too. Again, ladies first. Why? He was in El Paso today.
Of course he went to the border. He secured the border the first time around. He was able to bring down illegal immigration to record lows. So, of course, he's going to go down to the border right now when it's at an all-time high. I will definitely go back to this blowing up the border bill idea. That is not fair to say at all, because this bill does not do what the Republicans know is necessary to secure the border. It does not end catch and release, which is a huge problem, and we need to reinstate that.
It was endorsed by the Border Patrol Union that also supported
the Border Patrol Union said today that Joe Biden should not even talk about the Border Patrol Union.
We had a perfect border bill over a year ago. H.R. 2 was absolutely the bill that we needed, and it didn't get anywhere because Democrats did not want to come to the table. And now Joe Biden is want to talk about coming together. No, thank you.
Rome was absolutely right. Why is Donald Trump down there? To preempt Joe Biden's lies, to remind the American public they had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years, and to make the point that Joe Biden could do exactly the same but chooses not to.
They held illegal immigrants in Mexico. That's what brought the.
I want to go through
They weren't very humanitarian about it either.
I want to go through the policy differences. Let's tick through a few of them here. Border policy differences. Donald Trump had a zero-tolerance policy at the border. It allowed authorities to deport adults who crossed the border illegally. President Biden then rescinded that zero-tolerance policy. Donald Trump invoked Title 42. Of course, this was during COVID. It was a public health law, rarely used, but used in this case to deny asylum during the pandemic. Then there was also, as you just mentioned, the Remain in Mexico policy. That forced asylum seekers to wait in Mexico for their immigration hearings. President Biden ended that. So those are the differences. Who got it right?
Well, you've got to have a humanitarian approach, but you have to think that these are human beings, if you will. You can't separate children from parents and say that's going to be a deterrent. That was a Republican-written policy.
Hold on.
No one is saying
that Mexico isn't and has never been a good faith partner.
So did President Biden get it right? Yes or no?
Did he get right? What, rescinding those policies?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did he get it right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
why?
Because, again, I think that A. Scott is right here, because at the end of the day, there are very strict humanitarian issues that were not regarded by the Trump administration. And I think that within those policies was an anti-humanitarian, was a xenophobic, was a narrative, and a policy action that was quite frankly disturbing.
I would say there's nothing humane about what Joe Biden's doing. He's harming the migrants and he's harming Americans. And right now it's going to be his Achilles heel and why he's going to lose the White House in November, because if he doesn't change course and he can do it all by himself, the American public's going to make him pay.
Yeah, and there is not a single.
Now I know you are.
There is not a single migrant that is safe coming to this country because the cartels are in charge of getting them here. They are being brutally raped. They are being murdered. People are dying trying to get here, swimming. They cannot get here.
Which they were running from at much higher levels in the country.
In the winter, in the summer, in tremendous heat.
Do something about it. Do something about it.
Your party is in power.
You control the money and the finances to hire more people and to invest in the.
I don't want to point fingers here. All I'm saying is that they're not safe trying to get here.
This is partly why both of these two men, the incumbent and the one who is predecessor, were down at the border today. In case you're wondering where they actually went, President Biden was in the Rio Grande Valley sector, Brownsville. That's as far southeast as you can go. Donald Trump went a little bit more north and west into El Paso, Eagle Pass. We show that video all the time. Just to give you a context, an idea of where they went and the difference in those areas. Illegal encounters where President Biden went in the 3 most recent days, 34 total. Eagle Pass, Texas, north of 1,200. In December and January, 25,000 in Rio Grande, 87,000 in the Del Rio sector. So President Biden went to the border. He also went to a place that hasn't had as much of the activity as where Donald Trump was today. Not saying one's right or wrong, just pointing out where both are today. We'll put a button on that for a second. Big loss, by the way, for the state of Texas and its Governor Greg Abbott, a federal court blocking the implementation of a state law that would allow state and local law enforcement to arrest illegal immigrants. Now, the court ruled immigration enforcement is the sole responsibility of the federal government. Texas is now appealing that ruling. Joining us now is the Congresswoman from the state of Texas, Dallas area, I believe, Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne. Congresswoman, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time. This was a bad ruling in your state today. Basically said what Greg Abbott signed into law can't happen. Yeah. So what comes next?
Well, I think what you've seen is you've heard Governor Abbott say that he's going to appeal it. Obviously, he's going to appeal it. But I think the important thing to see there is it's the responsibility of the federal government to enforce our immigration laws. What do you do when the federal government doesn't enforce our immigration laws? What do you do when the federal government actually changes policies to allow tens million plus illegal immigrants to come into our country? What do you do when the federal government has a catch and release program, has a mass parole program? When you see people like Laken Riley, who is beaten to death by a Venezuelan illegal immigrant who should never have been in this country, but as a direct result of Biden's parole policies, was allowed entry, was released into the population, and was able to kill a 22-year-old nursing student who was doing nothing more than jogging on our college campus.
So you ask, what do you do? And isn't the responsible thing, Congresswoman, to do is to have the sitting governor and the president of the United States work together? But that's not happening. And I think most reasonable people would say because that's not happening, aren't both at fault?
Yeah. No, I think when you see a governor who's trying to protect his citizens, when he's trying to protect his state from an invasion that we're seeing at the southern border that's caused particularly by the Biden administration policies, he's tried to work with the president. He has given him more than ample opportunity. It's been 3 years now. 10 million people, 60% of getaways have gotten into Texas. 40% of all the illegal crossings have been in Texas. At what point in time does a governor have no further choice? He doesn't want to spend that $5 billion last year that they had to spend on Operation Lone Star. He definitely doesn't want to spend the $6.43 billion that he's going to have to spend this year on that. So, yes, he would love for the governor to do his job. If you heard him down, well, I think what you heard in Eagle Pass today is he's lauding, former President Trump because he recognized that those policies actually did secure the border. Those policies exist, but they were taken off the table from day one that Biden came in. He has 60 separate policies that have led to the destruction of our border right now. And I think, if he wanted to partner with our governor, he had ample opportunity to do that, but he hasn't.
Are you of the belief that Donald Trump is the only one who can fix this?
No, I think the House has actually sent over H.R. 2, our Secure Border Act of 2023. It's been sitting and just languishing in the Senate. I think that the Democrats have ample opportunity if they were serious about securing our border. They've got all the tools there. It includes building the wall. It includes getting rid of the catch and release program. It includes actually working with local law enforcement. It includes redoing our asylum laws that actually recognize that people can stay outside of our country, the first safe country that they get into, or a remain in Mexico policy. But stop letting millions of people into our country illegally that are literally killing, raping, and committing crimes throughout our communities.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, state of Texas, thank you for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
All right. Y'all ready to go again?
Yeah.
Hold on, but I want to ask you a tailored question real quick. You two, you're a practicing attorney. You're a law school
recovering attorney.
Governor Abbott signed the law that basically said we can arrest illegal immigrants, and his thinking was because the feds aren't doing anything, right? That was his thinking. And the federal judge today said, no, you can't, because it's in the purview of the federal government. Would you agree that Greg Abbott overstepped his bounds?
No, I would not. The reason why Greg Abbott's having problems is a case that came up in 2012, Arizona v. U.S., which Judge John Roberts screwed up. And if it wasn't for that case, Greg Abbott would have a lot more purview to do exactly what Joe Biden refuses to do in the state of Texas.
Roberts ruled against him?
Yes.
So that's why you say he screwed up, but I mean, that's the law, no?
It was a 5-4 ruling, Arizona v. United States. That case has to be tested again to find out exactly what the purview is for the governors in terms of protecting their constituents.
Well, I'm certainly glad my colleague's not a judge. I'm in a world of trouble. Here's the bottom line. That legislation or bill that Abbott passed in Texas was dead on arrival. That dog will never hunt. It's been the law of the land for decades, and that is that the Immigration Act has sole control and authority over controlling immigration. And so that state law cannot be in conflict with federal law. And so it was going to be overruled, and it's going to be upheld by the circuit. And if it goes to the Supreme Court, it's going to be upheld. Because I understand the Republicans' frustration and their dislike of what Biden's done, his humanitarian policies, and a way for people to have a pathway towards citizenship. At the same time, though, the law is very different. And the law is not compromising on this. You can't have every state having a different view of immigration and negatively impacting the immigration laws, the federal immigration laws that control what happens at the immigration level.
So
I have to say, this idea of sanctuary cities that the Democrats came up with,
that's a different
they're now.
We're going to get it. We're going to get it.
It's not a federal law. It's a much different issue.
That's exactly why Governor Greg Abbott was doing this,
and has not been.
So we're going to hold on. We're going to get into
why Governor Greg Abbott was doing this, though, because he does not have the support that he needs from federal government. So he is taking it amongst himself to be the opposite of a sanctuary city.
There's one thing that the Congresswoman said. There's one thing the Congresswoman said that was extremely problematic at the very end of that. When she basically alluded to there being millions of undocumented immigrants who are raping and killing people. That is statistically incorrect.
There shouldn't be anything.
Her commentary was wrong. There are not millions of undocumented immigrants raping, killing, That's just not
We're going to get into on the other side of the break.
Amount of violent crime
we're going to get into
undocumented.
We're going to get into on the other side of the break. Sanctuary cities. What exactly are the crime stats? We can talk about this all show, obviously. That's where we're going next. By the way, in the state of Texas, a wildfire, not sure if you saw this, spreading across the Panhandle, officially the largest in the state's history at more than 1 million acres. The cause of what started the blaze has not been announced yet. Smokehouse Creek authorities say it merged with another fire, and only 3% of that fire is contained. Look at that. To put this in perspective, the fire is larger in Texas right now than the entire state of Rhode Island. All right, coming up. As I promised, I keep my promises. The battle over sanctuary cities. What should President Biden do now? I asked that question to the Democratic congressman from Texas, Henry Cuellar, on the Hill just yesterday.
If I would be advising him, I would say definitely yes. Look at the people straight in the eye and say, look, we need to address the issue of migration.
So why hasn't President Biden said just that? Should he? Is that what needs to happen across the country? We'll get into it on the other side of the break when The Hill on NewsNation returns. Live look at the White House, by the way. I find this story fascinating. What about sharing classified information? The Biden administration is doing it left and right. Do you have a problem with it? It was actually celebrated today. What do we mean? That's when The Hill returns.
We're here to listen.
Liar! You're a liar!
We're here to listen.
Liar!
There'll be time for questions.
You are guilty and got blood on your hands for this murder, sir.
All right, so that was the mayor of Athens, Georgia, Kelly Girtz. He's a Democrat, and that's where Athens, of course, the nursing student Laken Riley was murdered at the hands of an illegal immigrant from Venezuela last week. Girtz was explaining that Athens, he says, is not a sanctuary city, and the crowd, as you could heard there, shouted him down, calling him a liar. Meantime, in New York, nation's largest city, the Democratic mayor there, Eric Adams, has done a 180 on a city that has prided itself on being a sanctuary city.
I don't believe people who are violent in our city and commit repeated crimes should have the privilege of being in our city.
Joining us now, NewsNation political contributor, one of our favorite New York residents, Chris Hahn. Chris, thanks for being with us here on The Hill. Who's right there?
You got a rowdy crew on your hands today, man. I know. I wish I was there.
I'm earning my money today. They might have to pay me overtime for this show.
I'm watching this debate and this show going on there, man. You need hazard pay for what's going on there today.
Are you trying to duck the question here, Chris?
No. First of all, I've been listening to this debate. I just was very much involved with a special election here in New York. And the only issue the Republican ran on was immigration. And during that debate, the Republican Party passed on an immigration bill that they themselves negotiated. And the Republican lost by 8 points. So I am not of the mind that immigration is going to be the number one issue in this election. It's great for the base. The Republican base gets all worked up about it. Democrats say it's important too. But at the end of the day, the margins who make up the elections do not vote on this issue, and they will not this year either, even in Athens,
What about
Georgia.
Sanctuary cities, though, Chris? For example, we had Henry Cuellar, a Democrat from basically right in between where Donald Trump and Joe Biden visited today. And I asked him, does President Biden need to come out and make the statement that sanctuary cities need to end, full stop? And here was the Democrat from Texas. Listen, I'll get your reaction on the other side.
If there's any sanctuary cities, those sanctuary cities should be able to provide any information to ICE. Imagine having a situation where ICE cannot get information.
He also came out and basically said, that the president should make that statement. Does President Biden need to come out and say, you know what, we need to put an end to sanctuary cities?
Look, I don't believe in sanctuary cities. I don't think they should exist. I think law enforcement should cooperate, and when people commit crimes, they should be punished for their crimes. And if they've committed other crimes, they should be held accountable for those crimes as well, including giving their information to ICE. And if deportation is warranted, they should be deported. And whether or not the president needs to act on this or say that or make a statement, as I just told you, I do not think that this is the issue that decides the election. If the president wants to come out and make that statement, let him do it. But here's
immigration
the thing.
Or sanctuary cities you don't think decides the election?
Sanctuary I don't think immigration or sanctuary cities decide the election.
Okay.
Either.
Hold that
Full
thought.
Stop.
Do you agree with
Will
Chris?
not happen.
Absolutely not. He's conflating two things. He's absolutely right about sanctuary cities. I will give Chris Hahn, the aggressive progressive, a little kudos on that front. But illegal immigration will decide this election. I'm going to tell you right now, because of what happened to Lake and Riley, Donald Trump will win the state of Georgia. And the question is very simple. How much more pain do Americans have to bear because of the Democrats' policies before Joe Biden does exactly what he's supposed to do?
We're not going to vote. We're not going to vote for Putin's puppet because of immigration. Not going to happen. There will be more important things to vote on. Every election since Trump's been there, there's been a caravan of violent migrants coming to America. It's been on every news channel. It's been talked about 24/7, 365 in every election. And it has not mattered, and it will not matter this year either.
So, first off, by the way, around the table, do you agree with Chris that immigration won't decide it? Yes,
I don't think immigration is going to decide it. I think that in places like Texas, where they were already going to vote Republican anyway, there's going to be that question. But for the most part, immigration is not going to be the deciding factor here. I do take issue with something both Chris said as well as the far-right gentleman over here.
His name's Ford.
Sanctuary cities, I did that on purpose.
No, I don't.
Sanctuary cities do not preclude any city that happens to have sanctuary status from reporting criminal activity, and they never have. As someone who still maintains residency and pays taxes in the city of Chicago, we've been a sanctuary city since before I was born. If someone commits a crime, whether they are an American citizen or an undocumented immigrant, there is nothing within Chicago law or any other city's law that precludes that person from being turned in and investigated. So acting as though sanctuary cities and sanctuary law protects you if you commit a crime, I think is completely a lie.
So,
and we can't perpetuate that.
What would you say?
What it does do, Blake, is that it's when you give the information to ICE. New York will give the information to ICE after conviction. Chicago will give it after conviction. They will not do it upon arrest. And that is the difference. And frankly,
and that's not a problem to you?
It has been. Look, it has been demagogued in this country. Immigrants commit crimes
profiling
at
is a problem
rates
to us.
than do. Immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than citizens here in this country.
That's true. And in every
Both of you have just what you both have just done is conflate two words. We're not talking about immigrants. We're talking about illegal aliens. It's a definitive legal term, and the Democrats continue to hide behind them. You know why? Because illegal aliens vote for president. Do you know that illegal aliens vote for president? You know why they vote for president?
No, they do not. They do not vote for president. Nobody who is not a citizen of this country votes for president.
Let's not tell lies on NewsNation or anything.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring it back to what's happening today, which is the fact that Lake and Riley's family is mourning the loss of their child right now due to the violent murder by an illegal immigrant.
And I want to give Roma the last word.
And Roma,
he could have been deported.
He
could have been deported. He shouldn't be here in the first place. And if Joe Biden and the Democrat leaders of all of these sanctuary cities wanted to enforce the laws, she could still be alive today.
Chris?
And Roma is right. And here's the thing. The bill that was proposed in the Senate would address why that guy was still here. He came in and sought asylum, and he's been waiting for a hearing. The bill that the Republicans are rejecting right now would have sped that up from 10 years to 6 months. And Republicans don't want to do that. And when we talk about her, we should talk about that, too.
He also came in 2022 before this bill was ever a thing.
Well, I got it, but this would stop that from happening to future Lake and Rileys. So I
think we shouldn't just care about future Lake and Rileys. We need to care about the people that are dying by the hands of illegal immigrants today. And Joe Biden went to the border and did not even address this death that just happened by the hands of an illegal immigrant. Instead, he talked about climate change.
When the Republicans make out like the Lincoln murder, it was because of the illegal immigrant. It was committed by a violent act, whether he was an illegal immigrant or not. But more importantly, between 2016 and 2020, I know there were illegal immigrants in this country that committed crimes under the Trump administration. So stop blaming the Biden administration.
Oh, sure, but the Democrats love to talk about the demographic of an individual. So you want to talk about whether you're a man or a female. I want to talk about if they're an illegal immigrant.
The American dream. They kept coming and coming and coming.
Scott, we can talk about this all day. And this is Chris. I gotta end it here. I know you probably want to hop on in a cell and jump on and come join us. It's an emotional issue. We can talk about this all day. Chris, we'll have you in person soon. Chris Hahn.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Beam you up. All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill, including President Biden's new action against China. Is the U.S. right now looking to ban vehicles coming from China? How that might play into the 2024 election as well. And did the California Governor Gavin Newsom, did you hear about this? Did he give preferential treatment to Panera Bread? Maybe. We'll explain.
Tired of late-night politics?
Excuse me, if I just want to laugh, just a little.
Stay up all evening with Antenna TV and enjoy your favorite classic sitcoms. Designing Women.
You're kidding! Oh, they stole my heart.
Becker.
Check out the Hippocratic Oath. It doesn't mention nice.
Wings.
I'm laughing already.
Classic comedy all day, all night on
Antenna TV.
You can't escape a traffic jam. Know what else you can't escape? Seasonal allergies. And you might think you can avoid that coffee stain until... Oh, really? You can't escape a lot of things in life, but you can escape prediabetes. Prediabetes captures 1 in 3 adults. There are usually no signs of prediabetes. In fact, most people don't even know they have it. But with early diagnosis, you can change the outcome and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Take action by taking the 1-minute risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. You might not be able to escape having this song stuck in your head, but you can escape prediabetes. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org today. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Every moment counts if you're at risk or living with lung cancer. And anyone with lungs can get lung cancer. It causes more cancer deaths than breast, colon, and prostate combined. And while there may be moments where you question your next step, through it all, Go-To for Lung Cancer is here for you. We are your community. For screening, treatment, and survivorship support, Go-To is your go-to. Confronting lung cancer starts here. Visit goto.org.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
A lot of people have trouble filing their taxes. I wonder if I can help.
You can help people with low to moderate income file their taxes through the IRS's Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, VITA, or Tax Counseling for the Elderly, TCE programs. As a volunteer, you'll learn how to prepare individual tax returns, and at the same time, you'll help taxpayers get tax credits and deductions they're entitled to. If you'd like to volunteer, go to irs.gov and type Tax Volunteer in the search field for more details.
You're listening to The Hill on NewsNation. To find NewsNation on your screen, go to joinnn.com.
I just got a text asking me to approve a bank transfer I didn't make. I bet you get messages like this too. So much of our lives are online today, from email to banking and everything in between. To make sure my information was protected, I checked out CISA's Secure Our World website for simple steps to stay safe online. Now I know how to protect myself from scammers, and you can learn too. Go to CISA at cisa.gov/Secure Our World.
Here's a fun fact for you.
The average chameleon can point their eyes in 2 different directions. On the other hand, the average human can't. So unless you're a chameleon, there's absolutely no way you can focus on texting and driving at the same time. So don't do it, unless you're a chameleon.
Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
What would we do, baby, without us?
Do you sense a theme here? Your favorite sitcoms from the 80s and 90s are all in one place. Rewind TV. Just go to rewindtv.com and check it out.
In the early hours after the tsunami, it was ham radio that was on the air, saving lives. When Florida was ripped by hurricanes, the hams were there. In the critical moments after the attack of 9/11, it was the hams who coordinated emergency messages. When disasters strike, the hams are ready. Ham radio works when other communications don't. To learn how you can become a ham radio operator, call the ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, at 1-800-326-3942.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. So I saw this cover from Time earlier today. It caught my attention. The upcoming edition for March. It's titled, quote, "The Secret Sharers." It features the CIA Director William Burns, the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and the Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines. Now, here's what Time in part reports in its story. Quote, "The United States has selectively declassified and leaked intelligence for as long as it has collected it, but the Biden administration's secret sharing program is new in several ways." It goes on to say the declassification and release of the Serbian troop movements is one example of a novel White House approach to using intelligence that has grown out of the U.S. response to the war in Ukraine. It basically talks about how the White House has been declassifying information to try to make a point and put it out there for reporters as stories develop and as world events developed. And I thought to myself, if this was a story about the quote-unquote the secret sharers in the Trump administration, it would be the biggest scandal there was.
They'd be impatient. We'd be watching it cover to cover on every newspaper. That's the whole point. Like, they basically do something, and it's okay when Democrats do it because you guys are the protectors of democracy. But as soon as Republicans do something like that and the mainstream media gets a hold of it, impeachment number 5 is coming.
More than impeach Mr. Trump over secrets. They're going to do more than that.
The whole point of this article was saying how the Biden administration has been declassifying information at a level that hasn't happened before. And I just, like, is that the new norm now? All of a sudden is declassifying information to put out to the public the new norm? You want transparency? What is it?
It may or may not be, but I don't see anything wrong. If it's declassified and they're using it for a purpose, then it's fine. You can't put out classified information or hold on to classified information or sit up and talk about it with people in general that you have over for a drink like Donald Trump did. And so I don't see why this is a big issue.
Americans have a habit of saying that the government is hiding something from them. I think that this was a mode of transparency. It was building on the strategic motivations and how we build towards our military fronts. And I think that it was actually very smart. He got in front of it. He said it. It's not something that threatens our national security. This has already happened in the past. I don't see a problem with it. Again, Americans want to know more. They want to be able to trust our institutions.
What do you see as a problem? What do you see as a problem with this?
Look, I remember there was obviously Donald Trump in the Oval Office with Lavrov from Russia, and it was a huge story.
Exactly.
Did he spill classified information? Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago after the presidency. Hold on, let me finish. The Iran war plans that he was waving around. Those are real questions, right? I'm just saying, with all of this declassification that we've never seen to put it out there. Look, as a reporter, you want stuff like that. What I'm saying is, had this happened in the other administration, I know from covering that administration, it would have been wall to wall.
There's a fundamental word you use, but you're running away from in your response, and that is declassified. Once it gets declassified, full stop, drop the mic. No more discussion about it.
Choosing what gets declassified is up to you guys, and in other administrations, some of this stuff wouldn't be declassified.
Declassify anything.
I'll just say, from a PR perspective, this seems like sort of a ruse. The Biden administration has a problem of not being transparent and not being forthcoming with the American people. He doesn't talk to the press enough. I talk to press that are in the briefing room, and they say we don't have access to this administration like we did with you guys.
So you brought up, hold on, I just want to bring up.
The Trump White House had a press secretary who never never actually spoke to the press. So
what are you talking about?
Haley did hundreds
I'm
of
not talking
briefings.
about Kate.
Sarah did
I'm talking about
hundreds
Stephanie
of
Grisham.
briefings.
I'm not talking
She was
about
the press secretary for 5 minutes.
never spoke.
I'll jump
We
in
had
at two
a
things.
single press conference.
Sean Spicer, we had Sarah Huckabee Sanders,
I gave the name of the one who never
You
gave a
use
press
Stephanie, so
conference.
Stephanie
yes,
never,
they
Stephanie
talk
never
to the
talked.
public every
Never
single
held a
day.
I said Stephanie.
Hold on. So Stephanie never talked to the media, did publicly, right? I will tell you from covering both White Houses, the Trump White House was more accessible.
My point
stop.
is this
that's
story...
not even. But I want to go back to another point that you brought up: transparency. Show the Washington Post headline. UFO reports demand greater transparency, lawmakers say. So for all the claims about transparency, keep in mind, we want transparency. We want answers on UFOs. I think the American public would love some of that. All right, not so secret, by the way, that lawmakers have real concerns about Chinese companies owning data on Americans. So how about this question? Should the U.S. ban Chinese smart cars? Now, the Biden administration announced today that it is launching an investigation into smart cars from China. Many of those, by the way, electric vehicles, describing them as a quote-unquote national security threat. It comes as BYD, a Chinese EV company, now says it's looking to put a plant in Mexico. Last month, you might remember, Elon Musk said that company has the potential to, quote-unquote, demolish most other companies in the world. I think you might agree on this. Prove me wrong. I don't know. No, but, what about this idea of banning, potentially, first off, they're launching an investigation, so we don't know what's going to happen. Already there's a 28% tariff on Chinese vehicles coming in, and that's why you don't have a mass market. But this company, as Elon Musk says, could wipe them all off, potentially. So what about this idea of banning smart cars from China?
They should be banned because those smart cars gather pattern of life data. Just like Amisha and I agree that TikTok should be banned as well. Okay. At the same time, though, Biden isn't doing that because of this. He is doing that because he's in trouble in Michigan and with the EV market.
Lots of questions here. Maybe it could be that. I don't know. Ban them or no?
Oh, absolutely. You know, China has a sneaky way of getting into American lives. It's something that we really need to take seriously, starting with TikTok and the youth. But really, these cars are a large issue. And I'm not surprised at all that China is talking about moving their plant to Mexico to kind of skirt this problem. They've been buying up land in South America, in Central America, for all sorts of reasons, manufacturing being a really, really large one of those.
3 for 3, you going to take us home, Scott, or no?
They're here already. So I think the Biden administration needs to do the investigation. There's got to be an inspection process that would determine or be able to reveal if they are gathering information for us, and if they're not, or if they are, then ban them.
Clearly, my friend Scott does not understand that the Chinese Communist Party is the greatest threat to America in the world in the 21st century. And you need to understand now. They're burrowed so far, and you got to pull them out now because it's only going to get worse.
Fair enough.
Meantime, in Dubai, check this out. The wave of the future, potentially. The United Arab Emirates city-states held the first ever jet suit championships yesterday. Thrill seekers snapping up in 1,500 horsepower jet suits, flying to the finish line. A moment of levity. My gosh, we got there. The future, potentially, in the UAE. All right, coming up, girl power. Are women fueling economic growth here in the U.S.? We'll look at the she-economy on the other side of the break. And, by the way, are we seeing potentially an uptick in inflation? Has it not gone away? The Hill, back in a few. In January at the fastest pace in nearly a year. It's called core PCE. Really what it is inflation minus food and energy prices. It likely reinforces Fed officials who say, you know what, maybe we're not confident yet that inflation is cooling enough to cut rates fast enough. What about it? What are y'all seeing? You think this is coming back or no?
We saw this information before from some other government reports. Not surprising, we had a slight uptick, but generally inflation is headed downward. What the experts will tell you is that if you see 2 months or 3 months of this, that's going to be more directional on where the economy is going and where inflation is.
So show the chart real quick about inflation monthly over the past year. You can see where things have headed here. It's up 0.4% in the past month, and if you think I have 0.4%, not a big deal. 0.4% over 12 months gets you to 5%, and that's the worry right now about whether or not this is picking up or not.
Well, that's the problem. Prices are up 19% under Biden. Food is up 20%. Energy's up 30%. Here's why Biden's in trouble politically. These are not luxury items. These are the essentials. So as long as food and energy are up, even though that took food and energy out because services went up, that is a huge problem.
Is that the most important graph of the election? Like as we
I don't think it's the most important graph, but I think it's more important than immigration. Because when we talk about what people are thinking about at home, they're thinking about kitchen table issues and what they can actually put on their kitchen table. So whether or not families can afford groceries will always matter. Whether or not they can afford to pay their electric bills will always matter. And we know that with, changes in our climate, there are some people who are going to have variable problems. And we've seen that across multiple states. To Scott's point, I do think that this is a trajectory that we will not see continue. Unfortunately, for your average American who's trying to push pennies together and make sure they can pay their bills, hearing about something, possibly going down in the next few months when they can afford it right now isn't necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, the Consumer Price Index, which measures everyday goods and services, proves that this is bad news for Joe Biden. If everyday products that the American people need to just live, their children going to school, gas, grocery store, all of those very, very normal things in day-to-day life. He's going to have an issue in November. That's not changing. It's been that way for months now.
But this is but one factor. When you juxtapose it with all the economic factors that are on the upswing, you just can't look at this in a vacuum.
Scott, here's the other problem.
Check your 401k.
Hold on. Here's the other problem.
Check your 401k.
It's doing great.
But
when you go to the
check employment rates.
All that's great, but when you go to the grocery store.
One of the reasons why we're seeing these rises at the grocery store has absolutely nothing to do with inflation as much as it does private industry greed.
You take that.
People are being
Donald Trump, the economy was great, so this is a double whammy for Joe Biden because people are going to say I didn't have this problem.
Show the tweet.
Inflation.
Show the tweet. One of my favorite follows on Twitter. This is what he said. Due to inflation, February now has 29 days. Boom. Made me laugh. All right. Meantime, as the Fed continues to keep a close eye on inflation and the economy, consider this headline from Axios. The she-economy is booming and expanding. This is data from Yelp from 2023. Shows women-owned businesses, business openings rather, saw growth well above the national average in several categories. Women are now tapping into industries that tended to be male-dominated, such as hotel and travel and home services. Business owner, what's going on here?
I kind of wonder how much of that home and travel has to do with these influencers that are trying to get hotels and free vacations.
Fair.
Part of me wonders if it's that. But in all seriousness, I think it's great that more people are opening up their own companies. My parents own their own business. It inspired me to start my own. And I think that the more people do that, the better off they'll be. If you stay in the corporate environment and you're in this loop-de-loop of just over and over and over again, maybe a 5% raise every 2 years is what you're going to see. Starting your own company, it's great if women do it. I want to see men do it too.
Is this a result of coming out of COVID, right? COVID happened, kids were home from school. Who stays home with the kids? Generally, the mothers. And now the kids are back at school. Okay, COVID's over. What am I going to, the pandemic's over. What am I going to do? Start my own business.
These numbers were kind of shocking to me because in the immediacy of the pandemic, us getting out of pandemic crisis mode, the numbers for women when it came to the economy were the worst that we've ever seen since women entered the workforce, because you saw less and less women who were actually employed. And even with those small businesses, that small business growth had all but stalled, and many of those businesses were really struggling. So I'm assuming a lot of this is new businesses, because those same businesses were like reaching out for PPP loans and other things. Right. They were having a really hard time staying on track, and women-owned businesses were some of the hardest hit.
Look, I think entrepreneurship is always great to nurture. I absolutely agree with Roma. I even agree with you, Amisha. My concern here is very simple. How much of this is what I would call expendable income in terms of the businesses you're producing? When you're talking about things like hotels, TikTok, whatever it may be, unfortunately, that is not a full-time plan, and some people are going to fall on their face.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, remember Y2K, all the worries about tech, what's going to happen, the world's going to end. My computer, my car, whatever. Here's a leap year bust that we didn't see coming. New Zealand, gas pumps stopped working because of a leap year glitch in payment software. You see it there. The issue impacted all self-service gas pumps across the country as they rely on only one single tech provider. So the glitch was due to a pandemic-era software update that didn't account for the extra day this year. And if you were in New Zealand, try to fill up at the pump.
It was their version of Y2K.
Their version of Y2K, right?
But the lawsuits are coming.
You think so?
Oh, no question about it. The gas station owners, for the loss of business,
revenue,
and because of the software, they'll sue the software company and even the providers and any consultants or vendors associated with it.
Well, see, I don't have an issue with that because New Zealand is one of the few countries in the world that has more sheep than people. And if you can't get to work, just borrow a sheep and go.
Board, we'll leave it there. I was going to ask if any of y'all had any...
Don't leave it there.
Well, I was going to ask if you had any final immigration thoughts, but then we would run into the Leland show, and I don't want to do that.
He's going to try to keep all the sheep out of the U.S. now. And they're coming across the northern border.
Speaking of Leland's, coming up...
They're coming across the northern border.
Coming up here on the Hill, this story, my goodness, now there's a response. Panera Bread, politics, and paychecks. It's something going on in the state of California. Did Gavin Newsom help a billionaire avoid a new wage law? The governor is now responding. What is going on in that state? Leland Vitter joins on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
California corruption.
Put powerful and influential people to the test of rigorous questioning. If we can make what happens in Washington relevant at home, then we've done a real service.
The Hill Sunday with Chris Starwalt. This Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern on NewsNation.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill. Before we say goodbye, story that caught our eye. Sometimes it just might pay off to have friends in high places, potentially the governor's mansion. There's a new report from Bloomberg. According to Bloomberg, the California governor, Gavin Newsom, recently pushed for the exemption in the state's new $20 minimum wage law, from $16 to $20. The rule notably benefits a company known as like Panera. And the billionaire Greg Flynn, who owns 24 Panera locations, is a longtime Newsom donor. Now, Newsom's office is responding to the allegation saying, quote, the governor never met with Flynn about this bill, and this story is absurd. Our legal team has reviewed it, and it appears Panera is not exempt from the law. Leland Vitter, host of On Balance.
What a coincidence, huh?
That if your restaurant bakes their own bread
and sells it as a standalone product, then you are exempt from this rule. Which, can anybody think of a chain in America that bakes bread and sells it as a standalone product that has multiple locations in California? What I thought was really interesting was Gavin Newsom's excuse, which he goes, this is just part of the sausage-making process of lawmaking.
This guy Flynn, they went to school together with Newsom, donated $100,000 to fend off a recall. Yeah, and then another $65,000 to support the governor's recall election in 2022. All just one big
coincidence. It's amazing the things that happen in California.